So on this episode of Anti-Rambles about another isekai anime is how a realist hero rebuilt the kingdom. The anime I personally was most thrilled to ramble about for reasons a lot of my regular viewers will know, but for the sake of possible new audience, my perfect isekai show would be a person that is reincarnated in a semi-important role for a community like a family of priests and or librarians, and then acquiring skills dealing with languages, cultures, and people to deal with his problems instead of just fighting away his problems, or be a comedy relief character for more powerful sidekicks. Think Arch Enemy and Hero, or any other anime like that, but isekai. And with the premise of the story, I thought that maybe this is the one, you know? And before you ask, yes, I did wish for Star Wars prequels to be basically nothing but the Senate debating politics for 2 hours straight. Basically, our story begins with a typical world being under a threat from a demon lord, so the multiracial kingdom of Elfrieden summons our protagonist, Soma Kazuya, who was a lonesome person without any living relatives that studied to be a local politician, which is shown by the fact that before his summoning he read Machiavelli's The Prince. Well, thank God he didn't read Mein Kampf. So after summoning, the kingdom wishes to basically use Soma as a tool and sell him to the Grand Chaos Empire. I see Japanese fantasy naming conventions continue to be extremely creative and definitely understanding the meaning of the words they use, but instead Soma uses his politician skills to talk about economic policies of the kingdom, and the king was so impressed by that he abdicates his throne to him and gives his daughter as a side reward. Thus begins the tale of King Soma and his quest to make sure his new kingdom doesn't fucking starve to death. And I like the premise. This is exactly what I would want to see in an isekai story. Our protagonist is a non-combatant, comes with actual valuable skills he learned in our world that he uses throughout the story, and does mostly non-combative stuff. His magic is good for paperwork, most of the characters he recruits also help him with the boring politics and paperwork stuff, and even during the inevitable combat sections of the story he is mostly doing the thinking part of war and not the fighty bit. It's a shame that the rest of the anime isn't very good. The biggest problem with the show itself is its pacing. It genuinely feels like we're watching an abridged version of the story, kinda like the Big Orders OVA, and many elements of the show that would probably have more significance in the novel here are barely explored, to the point where reading the Wikipedia plot synopsis feels as if you're reading about a different show altogether. The Dark Elven subplot gets mentioned once as an introduction, then once again as a reminder that it exists, and then we immediately jump to a landslide that apparently Soma did some sort of political campaign to trim the forest in the background? I don't know. Aisha sure does talk like she at least proposed that to the elders before, and it wasn't just forgotten about until it became relevant. The event that Wikipedia describes as 1 week war in the anime itself feels more like 3-day war at best. The blossoming romance between Soma and Lisuke is more transparent than a needle on a white carpet, which made the latter revelations that she'll die for him seem kind of weird. And because of this abridged retelling nature of the plot, the world building of the show also feels a bit lacking, as if every episode gives the world of the show more and more holes. The graphics and the music of the show are lackluster, to put it mildly. An action that doesn't give you any really negative or positive thoughts and just feels very average and on the cheap side, but if you're like me and actually make screenshots of the anime, you will feel the guts and the quality really well. I really wanted to like this show, really am, but as it is at best lackluster, and now that I think about it, a lot of the things our protagonist is implementing make sense when you think of our modern way of life and sensibilities, but very little in a medieval fantasy environment, especially with the whole food crisis and recruitment arcs. But as a mindless binge it works. You'll forget about it in a week or so anyway.